I was 20, studying abroad, in a city where I didn't know a soul yet. I lived on the top floor of an old apartment building, the kind with a heavy street door you needed a code or a buzzer to get through. Stone stairs, a row of little brass buttons by the entrance, a name card beside each one. That street door was the whole reason I felt safe walking home alone. You couldn't get in unless someone let you in. It started on the bus home from class, late afternoon, the bus half full. A man a few seats back, watching me. Not a glance, a stare, the kind you feel on the side of your face, the way you'd look at something you'd already decided to follow. So I did the smart thing, or what I thought was smart. I got off 2 stops early, somewhere I never normally got off, waited until someone else pressed the bell, and slipped out the doors at the last second. I didn't see him follow, and for 3 or 4 streets I let myself believe I'd lost him. Right up until I checked over my shoulder at a crossing, and he was half a block back, unbothered, looking away a half second too late. I did everything they tell you after that. Ducked into a shop, doubled my route, crossed at every light. And when I finally came out near my own street, I let my shoulders drop. Sure, I'd shaken him. And I looked back one last time at my own front door, and there he was at the end of the road, watching me find my key. So I went up those stone stairs 4 at a time, into my flat, deadbolt across, chain on, back against the door. He didn't have the code. He didn't have a key. He was down on the pavement, and I was 5 floors up behind a locked door, and that was supposed to be where the outside stopped. Then the intercom rang. The little handset by my door, the one that connects to the panel down at the street, and against every instinct, because some part of me needed to know, I picked it up. Nobody spoke, just the open air of the street and somebody breathing. I set it back down, and that's when I heard it, not in the handset, through the walls, the buzzer in the flat beside mine going off. Then one further down the hall. He wasn't buzzing me. He didn't know which button was mine. He was pressing all of them. He'd gone down the whole panel, button by button, top to bottom. Every flat in the building ringing at once, hoping somebody, anybody, would answer. And in an old building full of people expecting deliveries, somebody always does. A neighbor, 2 floors down, picked up before I understood what was happening. I heard their voice come on the line, annoyed, ordinary, and then I heard him say a name into the speaker. My name. Easy, like a question. Odette? Odette, he said again. And now it wasn't a question. It was soft, almost kind. Open the door, please. I only want to talk. I didn't say a word. I stood frozen with the handset against my ear, like it might bite me. I'm not a bad guy, he said. You'll see. Just come down. And when I gave him nothing, no voice, no breath, no buzz of the door, he changed what he was asking for. Smaller. Come to the window, he said. Just come to the window. Look at me. And that's the one that turned my stomach to ice. Because he wasn't asking me to let him in anymore. He'd given up on the door. He was asking me to show my face at a window. In a building of 40 windows, all dark, all identical from the street, so that the one that lit up with a girl looking down would tell him exactly which floor, which side, which flat was mine. He didn't know where I was in all that black glass, and he was waiting for me to light it up for him. I did not go to the window. I put the handset down so gently it didn't click, and I stepped back from it, and from the door, and from anything that faced the street. And I sat down on the floor in the middle of the room where no window could see me, and I made myself as small and as dark as the building already looked from below. If he wanted to know which flat was mine, he was going to have to guess. And I was not going to be the light that answered him. It rang at intervals for hours. I let it, arms around my knees. Every ring a small electric proof he was still down there, still at the panel. I called a friend just to have a voice in the room that wasn't his. Once, late, the handset lit and I heard him, almost gentle. "Odette, I'm so thirsty. Just a glass of water." A small, reasonable-sounding reason to come down and crack the door. I hung up. I didn't make a sound. And somewhere in the dead middle of the night I slept, curled below the line of the windows. Not because I felt safe, but because the body gives out while the man at the door does not. In the morning, the panel was quiet. I called my father, who drove across the city to walk me out of my own building. The street door was shut, locked, exactly as I'd left it. It had held all night. But there was a folded note wedged into the buzzer panel, tucked behind the brass button beside my name card. No envelope, just left there against the buttons, sometime in the dark. It said, "Odette, I'm a nice guy. You should have opened the door for me." And I stood there holding it, my father right beside me, colder than I'd been all night. Because it wasn't a threat. It was disappointment. He genuinely felt I'd been rude. We went to the police that morning, and my father changed the entry code. I never saw the man again, but I've never picked up an intercom the same way since. For a long time, I was angry at that door for not protecting me, and it took me a while to understand it had done its whole job. It kept him out all night, exactly like it promised. He just never needed it open. What I lock now isn't really the door. It's the part of me that still wants to be polite to a voice that knows my name. I lived alone, ground floor, in a low-brick apartment building on a quiet street. The kind of place where you leave a parcel by the door for an hour and never think about it. I'd lived there 2 years. I knew the neighbors to nod at. Nothing had ever happened. It started with packages. A small thing, the kind of thing you barely file. That's what I thought it was, anyway. First, it was one parcel. A thing I'd ordered, marked delivered, gone from the step. Porch theft. It happens everywhere, I barely flagged it. Then another, 2 weeks later. Then mail, not bills, just gone. And I did what everyone does. I shrugged. I filed it under bad luck on a street with foot traffic. I told the delivery app to leave things with a neighbor. I was annoyed. Afraid wasn't anywhere in it yet. The first time I felt anything was a man across the street. Just standing. Dark jacket, hood up, on the far pavement. Nothing about him you'd describe twice. You can't be scared of a man standing on a public street in daylight. So I wasn't. I noticed him the way you notice a parked car. But I saw him again 2 days later, a little closer. And again near the corner when I came home from work. And somewhere in there my brain started keeping a count without telling me why. He was never doing anything. That was the thing I couldn't take to anyone. He didn't approach me, didn't speak, didn't follow on foot that I could prove. He stood. He was around. A plain, hooded shape at the edge of my street, at the edge of my eye, at the times I happened to be coming or going, which, I'd realize much later, were exactly the times he'd have needed to learn. Morning out, evening back, when the lights went on, when they went off. It came to a point on a weekday, early, barely past dawn. I woke up before my alarm for no reason, the way you do when something's wrong before you know it's wrong. My bedroom faced the side of the building, a narrow strip of grass, a window I never bothered to fully cover because who was going to be standing there? And I lay there in the gray light, and I felt watched the way you feel a draft. And I turned my head toward the window, and there was a shape against the glass. The hood, right at my window, close, on the strip of grass that belonged to no one, where there is no reason on earth for a person to stand at 6 a.m, not passing, stopped, facing in. I don't know how long he'd been there before I woke. That's a question I've never been able to put down, whether I woke because he arrived or whether he'd been at that glass a while and I only surfaced at the end of it. I rolled off the bed onto the floor, out of his line, and I yanked the blind down the rest of the way, heart slamming, phone in my hand, and I lay on the floor of my own bedroom listening, and I heard nothing, and somehow the nothing was worse, because it meant he wasn't running. A man who gets caught at a window runs. This one just stood on the other side of a thin blind, in no hurry at all, the way you stand somewhere you've stood many times before. And when I finally lifted the corner of the blind, an inch, to look, he turned his head and looked straight back at me, right into the gap. Not startled, not lunging, just a slow, level look, the kind that lets you know he'd already understood I was awake, that the blind coming down, me on the floor, all of it, he'd watched and accounted for. And then he turned and walked, unhurried, along the side of the building and out of the frame of my window, like a man leaving a place he knew well, in no rush, because he knew he could come back to it. I want to be honest about what I felt, because it wasn't only fear. It was a kind of vertigo. Because in that one level look, every small thing of the last few months snapped into a single line. And I understood all at once that I'd had the story backwards. I thought it started this morning, a man at my window, a beginning. It wasn't a beginning. It was a long way in. Because how does a man know which window is the bedroom? The one that isn't fully covered? What time I wake? Which side has the strip of grass? Nobody watches. You don't know those things about a stranger. You learn them over weeks by being around. And the packages, God, the packages. They weren't random and they weren't the crime. They were the first move. How he learned my name off a label, my hours off when things sat unclaimed. How long a thing could vanish from my step before I noticed. And for months, the answer to that last one was, I didn't notice at all. I called the police that morning, and they came, and they took the report, and there was nothing to hold. A man on a public street, no parcel they could pin to him, no plate, no name, gone along the side of the building before anyone arrived. Nothing taken that morning, nothing broken. A man being near is not against the law, and he was very, very good at being only ever near, standing right at the edge of what counted as a crime, and never once stepping over it where anyone could catch him. So I did the only thing that was actually mine to do. I broke the lease. I packed in days, gave up the deposit without a fight, moved across the city to a third-floor flat with no ground floor windows and a door I could see from the street. I didn't wait for him to do something. I was out within the week. No confrontation, no ending, no answer. The watch didn't resolve. It just lost its window when I took the window away. Somewhere out there is a man who spent a season learning the mornings of a woman who barely knew he existed, and the only thing that saved me was leaving before I found out what all that learning was for. I still check my step now, not for parcels, for the pattern. The same car twice, the same shape at the same corner, the small thing that goes missing and means nothing, and the second, and the third. And I've made my peace with looking a little paranoid because I know now what the alternative felt like. For months I told myself nothing was wrong, and the whole time someone was learning me. So I pay attention early now. I let the small things count. I'd rather notice 100 strangers who turn out to be nothing than miss the one who isn't. We were 4 of us, second year, sharing a unit in a complex on the edge of a small, safe college town. New build, half-finished leasing. Most of the block was still empty, units dark, available now signs in the windows. We were one of the only apartments with anyone actually living in it. I never thought about that as a danger. If anything, it felt private, quiet, like having a whole dark building mostly to ourselves. It was a weeknight, wine, and a movie. All four of us home, lights on, blinds open, the way you are when you feel safe. Pizza, a film none of us were really watching. An ordinary, warm, unremarkable night. And then somebody knocked. Not a tap. A heavy, flat, open-palmed bang on the front door. 3, 4, hard enough to move it in the frame. The kind of knock that's a statement, not a question. We froze, the way you do, and one of us laughed it off. Pizza's here, somebody's drunk, wrong door. One of my roommates got up to check the peephole, and she put her eye to it and went still. I can't see anything, she said. Nobody's there. Black. Something was over the peephole on the other side. A thumb, a hand, a piece of tape, something deliberately placed across the only eye we had on the hallway. You don't cover a peephole by accident. And then a man's voice, loud, right against the door. "This is the police. Open the door." And for 1/2 second, the word police did exactly what it's built to do. It made my hand want to reach for the lock. Then the rest of it caught up. No knock and announce, no name, no number, no blue light coming through the open blinds, no radio, no car in the lot that any of us had heard pull up, and a hand still mashed over the peephole so we couldn't see the police we were being told to trust. One of my roommates, steadier than me, called back through the door. "Can you show us a badge? Hold up ID to the window." And the voice didn't. It got louder. It got angrier. "Open the door right now." No badge came to the glass, no ID, just the demand, harder each time. A man insisting on the one word that opens doors, and refusing every single thing a real one would have offered without being asked. We didn't open it. We backed into the middle of the front room, all four of us, phones out, and somebody was already dialing the real emergency number. And that's when the banging moved. Not away, around. We heard it travel, off the front door, along the wall, to the sliding glass door at the back of the unit. And it started there too. A fist on the back glass. 2 of them now, we realized. One front, one back. Working both ways into the one apartment. Whoever was on emergency services was telling us to stay low, stay away from the doors. They were sending someone. And we were trying to be quiet, and it was impossible because the back glass one had started saying it too now. "Police, open up." Same line, same lie. From a man standing at a sliding door in the dark, where no officer in the history of the world has ever served a knock, hammering the glass hard enough that we backed off it, expecting it to come through. And then the front one did something that stayed in my body ever since. He went quiet. The angry one stopped shouting, and a different voice came on at the front door. Lower, calm, almost pleasant. Patient. The voice of a man who had decided we were going to open the door eventually, and was content to wait, and wanted us to understand, in the meantime, exactly how much he already knew about who was inside. Because that calm voice, through the door, started saying our names. Not one name, ours. First names, all 4 of us, slow and clear, the way you read a list. And something went out of the room. 4 people who'd told themselves, wrong door, drunk guy, mistake, hearing a stranger on the other side of the wood calmly recite the names of every single person in the apartment. The mistake theory died right there. You don't know 4 names by accident. This was the right door. It had always been the right door. And while my mind was scrambling for how does he have our names? I worked it out, and somehow knowing was worse. The mailboxes. Down at the entrance, a bank of little metal boxes, And ours had a building notice in it, one of those "to the residents of unit" letters the management leaves, with our names printed on it because all four of us were on the lease. He'd stood at our mailbox. He'd read our mail. He'd armed himself with our names on the walk to our door, so that when the badge trick failed, he had a second key to try. Familiarity. The sound of a man who knows you. And that's when the whole shape of it turned over, and I understood what I was actually listening to. Because this was a complex full of doors. Rows of them, most of them dark, most of them empty. Unlocked show units, ground floor windows, easy, quiet targets with nobody home. If they'd wanted to take something, I kept thinking, any of those was right there. Dark, empty, nobody to walk in on them. And they'd walk past every single one of those, past the easy, empty doors, to stand and hammer at the one with 4 girls and a movie playing. When the door held and the names didn't open it, the calm went out of him. We heard him at the front again, and there was a crack and a shower of something. He'd smashed the porch light, the one bulb over our door, putting out the light that lit him, putting our entrance into the dark. And then nothing. No threat, no last word. He didn't need to say he'd come back. He'd just taken the light over our door, the way you'd put out a lamp in a room you mean to return to. And then, sirens. Far off, then closer. And the banging stopped, both doors at once, the way 2 people stop when they've agreed in advance how the night ends. We didn't see them go. We were on the floor, away from the glass, holding on to each other in the phone. By the time the real ones arrived, quietly, lights but no siren by the end, so as not to warn anyone still close, the hallway was empty. Just glass, a scatter of broken bulb on the concrete under a dead porch light. The officers walked the complex and found nothing. 2 men, gone, out across the unlit ground behind the building where the walking trails ran into the dark. No road, no plate, no car anyone could describe, on foot into a place you can't follow at night. They took our statements, and one of them said the thing I think about most. He said, they knew your names, they knew your unit, and they hung around long enough that they know roughly how long it takes us to get here. He said it plainly, no shrug, the way you tell someone a true and useful fact. These 2 learned this address well enough to come back smarter. You should not be here when they do. So we didn't argue. The landlord let us out of the lease inside a day. I think the word police impersonation moves a landlord faster than anything. They put cameras on that unit after us and a heavier door for whoever came next. We were gone within the week, and the whole time we packed, I kept doing the same math the men had done, just from the other side. A dark complex, 1 lit window, 4 names on a letter in the mailbox downstairs. Nothing about it ever resolved. No arrest, no names, no answer to the only question that matters, which is what they were going to do if that door had opened. 2 men walked out of our night and into the trails and were never anyone the police could find. And somewhere they still know 4 first names and the address where they almost worked. We changed our locks by moving. We changed our numbers. And I still don't know what they wanted that night. Not really. Only that they had chosen us on purpose, and that it cost them nothing to walk away and keep us for later. I don't believe in safe buildings anymore. Not full ones, and especially not empty ones. A complex with 1 light on isn't private. It's a marquee. It tells anyone walking the dark exactly where the only people are, and that you'll be easy to be sure of, because there's no one else around to be confused with. We thought being the only ones home meant being left alone. It meant being the only door worth knocking on. We never opened that door, and our lock held just fine. That was never what scared me. What scared me was how long they'd stood out there, calling themselves the law, saying our names into the dark, knowing exactly which one window in all that black was worth knocking on. I still keep my doors locked, but what I really listen for now is the calm voice that already knows too much. So whatever's on the other side of your door tonight, make it show you, and let's never meet. 3 doors. A locked street entrance that gave a stranger my name through 40 buzzers. A quiet porch where the stolen mail turned out to be the first move of a watch months deep. And a calm voice in the dark, at the one lit door on an empty block, reading 4 names off the mail. All of them on the wrong side of a lock. None of them stopped by it. So before you close the tab, ask yourself the quiet question. Of those 3, the man at the panel, the watcher at the glass, the voice that called itself police, which would you least want standing outside your door tonight? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe so the next one reaches you before it reaches your threshold. And the next time someone's at the door and the lock is the only thing between you, make them show you who they are before you decide a locked door is enough.